Can I get your name and where you're from, if you don't mind?
I'm Kai.
Kai, can I get spelling for you, buddy?
Straight out of Dogtown, K-A-I.
Hola Chula! Thank you so much for clicking on to this video. And if you are new here, well then, hi, hello, my name is Kai. And if you're coming back to my channel, well then, ooh. And if you're coming back to my channel, well then it's great to see you, babe. Here on my channel, I like to share my experience as a person who has left the Jehovah's Witnesses organization and what it was like to grow up in a high-control Christian cult. So it seems like you guys like reaction videos, which is painful for me, but you gotta give the people what they want, so here we are. I noticed that on jw.org they have a whole series of videos specifically directed at teenagers. Mostly they're centered around giving teenagers advice, life advice, dating advice, and obviously I'm sure that there's just more guilt tactics and shaming and indoctrination that's going to be laced in all of these videos, but they're super short, super quick, so I figured let's take a look, let's tear them apart and have a wonderful time doing it, and all the while looking very fabulous. So let's go! Okay, so the first video that we're going to watch is what should you know about sports? And what you should know about sports is that Jehovah's Witnesses kids are really discouraged from joining school sports, but for some reason my parents still let me engage in other after school activities, but I just couldn't go out for sports teams, which is fine for me because I literally possess no athleticism at all. But I can imagine that that would be very hard for someone who does enjoy sports and would be a really great asset to their team if they were allowed to actually be part of something like that. So let's see what they have to say.
Sports. They can be good for you. In fact, at 1 Timothy 4:8, the Bible says that physical exercise is beneficial. Sports can teach you vital skills, including how to cooperate and communicate with others. But sports can also be bad for you. It all depends on what you play, how you play, and how much you play. Consider what you play. At Psalm 11:5, the Bible reminds us that God hates anyone who loves violence. And some sports are clearly violent. So ask yourself, does it make sense to be entertained by watching others get knocked around? Next, consider how you play. At Philippians 2:3, the Bible says, "Do nothing out of contentiousness or out of egotism, but with humility, consider others superior to you." Of course, nearly every sport involves a degree of competition, but a win-at-all-costs attitude will just take the fun out of the game. And besides, at Proverbs 16:18, the Bible says that pride is before a crash. So ask yourself, do I enjoy playing with overly competitive and prideful people? Then why would I want to be like that? Finally, consider how much you play sports, or even watch. At Philippians 1:10, the Bible says, make sure of the more important things. That's good advice, because let's face it, putting too much emphasis on sports is like putting too much salt on your food. If you spend too much time watching or playing sports, other things in your life will suffer. That includes your family life, school grades, and the time you need to devote to worship. In the end, sports shouldn't be the most important thing in your life. Instead, think of it as the reward you get for taking care of your responsibilities first. That way, you really get the benefits of sports and avoid the pitfalls.
Wow, okay. As we noticed in our viewing of The Prodigal Son, Watchtower really likes to communicate to their people that the society always comes first. Your dedication and your service to the Watchtower Publishing Company always comes first, so much so that they tell you to be mindful of how often you watch sports. And also, I think it's fair to note that if a person is a boxer, they would be disfellowshipped. You can be disfellowshipped for being a boxer. And the thing about those sports is that, yes, are people getting hurt? Some really tragic accidents happen in wrestling, in boxing, but I don't necessarily think that that makes the person inherently a violent person, because that is a situation where two people have already agreed. They've already agreed to the terms of the sports that they're playing and the activities that they're engaging in. So it's not like the person is just going up to people and beating the shit out of them. It's not like people who are in that industry professionally, they're not like just going out and hurting other people for no reason. Because to me, that's what violence means. It means hurting someone just because you can. They're just so insecure. Like, this kind of just reads as insecure to me. You're so desperate to keep people focused on working for you that you literally have to tell them what kind of sports they can watch, how much they can watch them, and also tell them not to engage in competitive behavior, when literally, what's the point of a sport? What's the point of it if you're not going to be competitive? There's no point to that. Like, do people play for fun? Absolutely yes. But do you also want to win that game? I would think so. Why are you playing a game if you don't want to play it well? And I feel like you could also extend that belief into other positions. For instance, I was a salesperson for a number of years in my life, and obviously that is a very competitive job. You're competing with other salespeople at other companies, but you're also competing with the people around you, because usually you get paid more money if you are a higher ranking agent. So in that situation, does Jehovah condemn competition? Does he condemn having a competitive spirit even if it's critical to your work? Why is sports being specifically singled out? I don't understand that. Something else I didn't really think about is that a lot of times people find identity in sports. Like, for example, like if you're from a place and you have a local sports team, then you might take a lot of pride in that. Then I think that obviously, like, having an outside source of identity, such as a sports team, like regional, national identity, they don't really want you to be so close to that. And they would rather you find your whole identity within the Watchtower organization. Doesn't God have better things to worry about? Like, okay, so the next video that we're gonna watch is called Video Games. Are you really winning?
Video games. They can be a lot of fun and can seem like a great way to pass time. But like most forms of fun, playing video games can take over your life in ways you don't want. For example, at Ephesians 5:15 and 16, the Bible says to make the best use of your time. So if you're up when you should be sleeping, then who's in control? You or the game? That doesn't make you a winner. Think about it. If you lose money, you may be able to get it back. But that's not true when you lose time. In a sense then, time is more valuable than money. So don't let yourself be robbed. Do you find yourself skipping meals, not doing homework, and generally not taking care of yourself in order to get through endless levels in your game? How can you stop losing out on those important parts of life? Is your gaming console in your bedroom? Move it out so you can get some sleep. At times, it might be good to take a break. Why not stop playing for a week? Replace gaming with something active. You know, actual exercise. Come to think of it, you might want to do some of that every day. At Ecclesiastes 3:4, the Bible says that there's a time to laugh and a time to dance. So it's okay to spend some time playing video games. Just not all the time. There's something else video games can rob you of. Your sense of right and wrong. The Bible says that God hates anyone loving violence. The fact is, video games promote lots of things the Bible condemns. Violence, immoral sex, and spiritism. Is it just a game? Imagine you were doing that in real life. You know, all that stuff in the game you're playing. What kind of person would you be? Your choice in video games may say a lot about who you are and what you think is right and wrong. What about online games that connect you with other players?
No.
Do you know who's on the other end? Your game could be putting you with the wrong people. It's definitely worth taking a look at your gaming habits. The bottom line, playing video games can be good recreation. But don't let games rob you of your time or your sense of right and wrong. Instead of trying hard to be a winner in a game, use your time and energy to be a winner in real life.
I guess touch grass is actually scriptural advice. Never knew. The thing that I actually think is pretty dangerous about content like this is that Watchtower is putting practical advice, generally positive advice, in between their more cultish beliefs or what they're really trying to do to indoctrinate members, and then again bookending that with generally practical advice. There's a term for this, again, in the sales world, where maybe something you're selling to someone has two of the things they're looking for, but it doesn't have this one other thing that they were looking for. So what you do is you present the positive, you present the disappointment, and you present another positive. It like does something to the person's mind where if you end the sentence on a positive note, then they leave that feeling positive and they're more inclined to purchase your product. You could kind of apply that same logic to what these videos do to people, because you're buying in on, again, this general life advice, very positive, go outside, stay active, don't let video games or the internet, don't let that consume your life. Like, again, that's fine, there's nothing really wrong with that. But when you turn it into, you have to be mindful of what kind of video games you're playing and what are you bringing into your house and does it honor Jehovah and all of this nonsense, that doesn't really matter. They've done studies on this. Violent video games do not necessarily make a person more violent, because that's not how people typically work. Like, if someone is going to do that, then they were always going to do that. They always had the disposition to do that. But just being around material like that doesn't necessarily transform you into a whole different person. If only they knew that I discovered I was bisexual because I was playing The Sims 2. The video would be a little different. And the last video that we are going to watch is called How Can You Flee from Immorality? And I'm going into all of these blind. I'm not quite sure I know what to expect. I think I have an idea, actually. So we'll see if I'm right. Oh God.
Mum's been working hard lately, but I wish she worked harder for Jehovah. I try to help out where I can. Oh, by the way, I'm Jin. Every day starts the same. I grab a drink of water. I say hi to Jun. He's in my congregation. And then there's Mi Kyung. Okay, here we go. I say hello. She says something clever. I try to leave. So, this is different. She's having trouble in math and needs my help. I don't want to be rude, but if I help her with her homework, how far could the relationship develop? How do you say no to a girl like her? Why can't I get it out of my head? Things are always better when Uncle and Auntie are around. Even Mum makes sure she's home for dinner and broadcast night.
Broadcast night!
Uncle wants to work together in service this weekend. Maybe that will help clear my head. Jehovah must be disappointed in me. I couldn't take it anymore. It was difficult, but I told Uncle everything. I felt guilty that I knew I shouldn't, but I liked the attention. We read Genesis 39, 7 through 12. I knew the account about Potiphar's wife, but he mentioned something I hadn't thought of before. He told Potiphar's wife, how could I commit this great badness and actually sin against God? But why did Joseph have to flee? Joseph fought her every day, but she wasn't going to give up. In her mind, it wasn't a question of if, but when. There came a point where he had to flee. I explained why I was ending the relationship, but she would not give up. You know the last thing she said to me? That I was a coward. But she's wrong. You're never a coward if you run to Jehovah.
So they rely pretty heavily on the example of Potiphar's wife in this video, and I think it's important to note that what was happening in that story was teetering on sexual assault, sexual harassment. Obviously, no means no. Consent is very important. But I think that it's really important to say that that is not what that girl was doing. And I don't know why. Well, I do know why. Because the story had to happen. And that's why she is the way she is. They had to make her unnecessarily aggressive and pushy. If someone is being that way to you, then that's somebody you don't want to date in the first place. They're using this to rob people of normal experiences. These are experiences that are entirely normal to want and to have. That made me unnecessarily emotional. I just remember exactly what that feels like. I remember that exact feeling of knowing that somebody wanted to be close to me, and then having this inner dichotomy that you like this and it feels good, but it's wrong. Something inside of you is telling you that it's wrong, and that could happen to you at any life stage as a Jehovah's Witness. If you meet somebody out in the world and you like them and they like you, but there's this wall separating you from them and from experiencing that happiness. And I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that Jehovah's Witnesses strongly believe that you do not date unless it is with the intention that you're going to marry this person. But I think that's incredibly dumb. Don't do that. Don't go into every relationship thinking that it's going to last forever, because most of the time they don't. And if you enter into a marriage and you have no life experience, you have no idea what you like, what happens 20 years later, 10 years later, when you start developing as a person and you start growing away from this person because you never had an opportunity to experience your life and to actually find out what you want, what you need from a person. Because I don't think that you can just make that choice. Because, I mean, what if you choose wrong? What if you choose wrong? And then you can't get divorced unless they cheat on you. That's like really repressive. It's really repressive to have to actively fight your emotions, your hormones, all of the time, because you have been told your whole life that it's wrong that you feel that way, that it's evil, that it's a disgusting sin for you to feel that way. It's just a part of life. It's just a part of life. It's just a part of being human for most people. It's really shameful, I feel like, because a lot of people will usually go into two separate trajectories after they've undergone tremendous repression like this, or in like any other Christian religion. I feel like this is not just specifically a problem with the Jehovah's Witnesses by any means. When you have been repressed like that, you can either totally flee from sexuality, you don't want anything to do with it, it makes you extremely uncomfortable, and then you never really have fulfilling sexual relationships, no matter what. And I think that's really sad. And then you have these other people over here, also very sad, where they're hypersexual and they go out of their way to have crazy experiences, possibly to an extent that they're putting themselves in danger. And neither of these things are healthy or conducive to having a stable, functioning relationship. In a way, they kind of create their own problems when they do like this, because you tell people time and time again their whole life that they need to cut off that part of them and make sure that they only feel that in a very specific and strict manner. Obviously, they want to have what has been kept from them their whole life, what they've been told that they're not supposed to enjoy, they're not supposed to seek out. That only makes somebody want to go and do that more. So then they come back and they've committed this sin against God just so you can turn around and use that against them and shun them. That's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, which is the only prophecy that's ever come true for them. My heart really goes out to young Jehovah's Witnesses who are being subjected to this, and regardless if they believe it or not, it still does damage to you as a person, damage to your psyche. That sort of is the stuff that you can only work out in therapy, and hopefully you find some inner peace with that. I think that's like one of the most beautiful parts of life, in my opinion. Being able to be intimate with someone, being able to be close to them, phenomenal, love it, 10 out of 10. But also, I have really enjoyed the relationships of my life that didn't work out. Just because those relationships didn't end in marriage doesn't mean that I equate them to be failures, because through those relationships I was able to learn about myself, and I was able to develop myself and get closer to the person that I want to be, but also find qualities and traits and things that I want in the person that I am going to marry. Having that information is so much more valuable to me now that I am an adult with a frontal lobe. I just think that it's only been positive for me in my relationships moving forward. Like, I learned something about myself that I didn't know before, and therefore when I entered into my next relationship, it wasn't an obstacle that we had to overcome. And were there other obstacles that we had to overcome? Yes, great. I would love to get all of that stuff out of the way with someone who is not my husband. That way, when I'm ready for that, I'm ready for that. Like I said, I just don't think that you can go through life, not have any of those experiences, and then expect that you're gonna have a great relationship. I don't know. I'm sure someone's gonna comment, it's possible. I met my husband, and then 2 weeks we were married. Great for you. Awesome. Love that for you. But yeah, that was just my thoughts, just my opinion, and just my video. So if you like this video, then you can leave it a like. And if you like me, then you can subscribe to this channel, where I will be talking about whatever I want, whenever I want, because this is my channel, and that's what we do here, baby. So subscribe. As always, chulas, I hope that you are having a beautiful, wonderful, amazing rest of your day. I'm filming this on election day, so I hope that you went out and fulfilled your civic duty, if at all possible for you to do so.